This video explains how to do the makeup work from Unit 1.2, Lesson 9. If you've been out, make sure that you're looking at the to-do list that's posted in the same page as this video, just so that you can make sure that you're caught up with everything. There's a few other assignments like homework and independent practice from yesterday that I just want to give you a friendly reminder about. So the first question says, in the applet below, describe a translation, rotation, or reflection you could use to take line L to line L prime. Then plot and label A prime and B prime, the images of A and B. So your job is to explain to me what translation you could use to get from the blue line to the green line. Go ahead and type your answer there. So you might have noticed that this image is a translation because we can simply slide line L to line L prime. You can complete a translation by redrawing the line if you want to complete it yourself. The line tool is right here, so you would be able to redraw the line over L if you would like to. And then you want to talk about where you're translating from. So for example, if you plotted point A prime here, you might say that you're plotting a translation of line L from point A to point A prime. So you need to make sure to specify where your translation is going. You could also do it in terms of B, right? You could say B to B prime, or you could plot the point elsewhere. I chose A prime here because it's simply 3 units down. And so then typing my answer will be clear in terms of the directions. I can write translation 3 units down from A to A prime. The second question says, in the applet below, describes the translation, rotation, or reflection that you use to take line L to line L prime, then plot and label A prime and B prime, the images of A and B. And when it says the images of A and B, what it's asking is just where does A, the original A, end up when you do the translation, rotation, or reflection, and same for B, where does it end up? So take a minute and type your answer there. You can pause this video. So you might have noticed that this was a reflection, and we can see that the reflection is happening by drawing. Let's see if I can get a draw tool. Here we go. By drawing line L and kind of an arrow towards line L prime. That always helps me to kind of see the reflection that's happening. And we know that A is going to end up being in the same place as A prime. And the reason is just because we're rotating around point A, and so A prime is going to be in the same place as A. So we can start by saying we have a rotation clockwise around A. And then of course, we're going to need to describe the angles. Now it's a little bit tricky to see the angle measure here because you don't have a protractor tool on the computer. But we can see that the angle it's rotating is definitely less than 90 degrees. And so I'm going to say about 45 degrees. And notice that when we do a rotation, I had to specify the direction, the center of rotation, and how many degrees I was rotating. You need all 3 of those pieces of information in order for the directions to be valid. Okay, so now you have directions to translate lines A and B, 3 units up and 2 units to the right. So it's asking you to translate both lines A and B 3 units up and 2 units to the right. So go ahead and pause this video and complete those translations. So you should have completed the translations for A and B. I'm not going to do it here because all you were doing was moving 3 units up and 2 units to the right on both lines. You would have needed to pick a point on line A just to make sure that your line was translated correctly. Because on B we have point K. So you want to make sure you're translating your lines using one point to keep you consistent. What you should have noticed after the translation, though, and that's the most important piece, is that the lines are still parallel. So even after we perform the translation, you should have ended up with two parallel lines. And if you're curious exactly what these lines should look like, you can go ahead and check the notes. They should be posted this afternoon. I will have all of the answers to each of these questions just from our classwork slides today. And so what's same in the original and the image is just that the lines are still parallel. Now, the next question asks you to rotate A and B counterclockwise 180 degrees with K as the center of rotation. And so I just want to show you how you would complete that rotation so that you know how to use the tools. When we rotate counterclockwise, we need to use the rotate around a point tool. And so the first thing that we want to do is we want to select the objects to rotate. So we're rotating this point here, and then the point around which we're rotating it. And it wants us to rotate the point 180 degrees using K as the center of rotation. And yesterday we talked about how when we're rotating a point 180 degrees, it doesn't matter if it's clockwise or counterclockwise, it'll end up in the same place. And you can see that when I rotated the line 180 degrees, it just ended up right back on top of each other. And let me actually go ahead and do A, because let's see how A is different. So for line B, the rotation of the line landed exactly on top of each other. For line A, if we rotate A around point K, it's going to look a little bit different because we're not rotating around the center point of the line. It ends up on the opposite side. So tell me what you notice and tell me what's the same. You can always pause this video to watch me do the rotations again, and go ahead and pause to answer these questions as well. Okay, so the next move is a reflection. Let's review how to complete reflections. This is the reflection tool. To reflect about a line, you want to first click the line that you're reflecting, then click the line of reflection, and you'll end up with the reflection there in your GeoGebra applet. Go ahead and do A on your own and then answer these two questions. So the key summary of this lesson, or this portion of the lesson, I should say, is that we can kind of predict what two parallel lines are going to do under a rigid transformation. So when we transform parallel lines and we move them, for example, translate them, we know that they're going to stay parallel. When we rotated our lines, they also stayed parallel. And when we reflected our lines, you should have gotten line A, which would be right about here, kind of outside of line B, and line A prime and B prime would also be parallel. So no matter which rigid transformation we form, our lines are still parallel. And that's the key piece of information that we're going to need for the second set of activities. So this activity says when you rotate two parallel lines, sometimes their two lines intersect and their images form a quadrilateral. And the quadrilateral that they're talking about, you can actually draw over this if you would like. The quadrilateral is here. And you could, if you wanted to draw each of the line segments, you could. It's right here in the center. Let me draw it in red pen so you can see. This is the quadrilateral. And so what is the most specific thing that you notice about the quadrilateral? And go ahead and answer this question here. So you might need to pause the video so you can type an answer to this question here. So one thing we will hopefully talk about in class today, it's still the morning, but I'm hoping we'll talk about, is that when you look at the quadrilateral, this angle right here, the orange angle, is the same as this orange angle here. And this green angle is the same as this green angle here. And the reason why we know that is because the sides are parallel. This is a parallelogram, by the way. And we can see that these parallel sides, so this side here and this side here, which are equal in length and parallel, are intersecting the same line segment, which means that the angle they form is going to be identical in both places, right? We've got the two orange corresponding angles and the two green corresponding angles. And that's our key takeaway from this activity. And then we're going to practice rotating some points. So it says the diagram shows a line with points labeled A, C, D, and B. On the diagram, draw the images of the line and the points A, C, and B after the line has been rotated 180 degrees around point D, and you can label the images of the points A prime, B prime, and C prime. So we want to do a rotation 180 degrees around point D. The only thing about this that's tricky is that we need to label the points. So this is the rotation, 180 degrees. Oops, it looks like I accidentally rotated a point instead of a line. So let's rotate the entire line. Let me clear my screen. This happens sometimes in GeoGebra, you just gotta be careful. Rotate the entire line. My tool is being goofy. Gotcha. Maybe it just wants me to select the point. So it looks like since the line is there, we need to draw the image of the line. Gotcha, I see what's happening. But it doesn't look like we have a line tool, so this is a little tricky. So for this one, draw the image of the line where it would be rotated if you rotated it 180 degrees. And we know that if we just spun this entire line around 180 degrees, we would end up on top of the original line. So in other words, if I took this line around point D and I rotated it 180 degrees, then I would be able to see where the new line ends up. So 180-degree rotation, I would just be taking this line and spinning it in a circle. But what it's asking us to do is to label exactly where the line, each of the points on the line is going to be. So we spun this line around point D, which means point B or B prime is going to end up on the opposite side of D because we spun the line 180 degrees, right? And so where will A prime and C prime end up? Go ahead and label A prime and C prime on your line, and then in this question, tell me the order of all 7 points. So what is the order of all 7 of these points? Okay, so you should have answered this question if you're still watching. Otherwise, pause the video. We're getting to the end here, and I want to make sure to recap the key points of the lesson for you. The diagram shows a line with points A and C on the line and segment AD where D is not on the line. We want to rotate the figure 180 degrees about point C and label the image of A as A prime and D as D prime. So we're rotating the figure 180 degrees about point D. So we'll want to click on our rotation and click on the segment. And we are rotating that figure 180 degrees around D. So we want to make sure to type in 180 degrees. And our line ends up out there. Whoops, didn't mean to go full screen on you. Which I think I needed to rotate the entire shape, but let's see if I can zoom out. There we go. Good. So I had trouble rotating this entire line AC and D in one, so we can just do it separately. If I rotate the segment AD around point D 180 degrees, it ends up connecting those lines. So what do you notice, or what do you know about the relationship between angles CAD and CAD prime? And the two angles they're asking about are this angle here and this angle here. So what do you notice? Well, we know that those two angles are the same. And the reason is because all we did was rotate our original segment. It's kind of like this T-shaped segment. We rotated it around point D. And so we have the exact same line segments connected. It's just facing a different direction. But those angles of intersection are going to be exactly the same. And in the final question, you're asked to rotate again 180 degrees around point O, label the image, and tell me what you know about the relationship. So go ahead and complete this rotation and see if you can notice something similar to what we noticed in this image. When you're finished, I want you to go ahead and take a look at today's exit ticket and reach out to me if you have questions. We are going to keep working on this tomorrow, so you shouldn't have a perfect understanding, but we should be starting to notice some of the patterns and angles that are occurring in each line. So again, finish this final question, complete your exit ticket, and then let me know if you have any additional questions.